choices. If you're going to use cloud storage, do some research, do some homework, find the best one out there, find one that demands privacy. Look for and act in a way that you take privacy seriously. You can tell Congress to update EFF. There's actually been some attempts legislatively to fix the problems in federal privacy law. And vanishingrights.com is a website where you can learn some more information specifically about specific efforts to lobby Congress, and it has like a form you can fill out, but basically write a letter to your congressperson. They've done all the work for you. You just literally put in your zip code and your name, and they'll tell you who your congressperson is, and they'll send a letter for you. There are other legislative updates that have been proposed. They haven't really gone very far, but now with this Petraeus thing, maybe this will be a nice impetus for change. You have to also protect your stuff. And again, this goes back to being, wary with what you store online and who you store it with. Think about which companies have your back and are going to fight for your privacy and those which are not. If you go to EFF's website, or EFF.org, we have if you type in know your who has your back, we've done a nice little chart where we tell you which companies have lobbied on behalf of user privacy or who've been generally good about being transparent about user privacy, and those which have not been good about being transparent about user privacy. And if you're somebody who does any sort of software or hardware work, if you're a tech person or a programmer, you need to put privacy protection in your software and hardware from the very beginning, from the ground up. There are different ideas about this, and I'm a lawyer, so I don't know the tech all that well, but privacy engineering or privacy by design, these are concepts that say, we're going to put privacy protections in place from the ground up. We're going to, if you run any sort of, I don't know, if you're an ISP to a certain extent, you run a Tor node, you keep databases of stuff. You can help privacy by, minimizing the amount of collection you keep. If you're a mobile app developer, develop your app in a way that it's not just sucking up every piece of data that the phone can potentially give you. And then finally, get educated and involved, support EFF's work. You can become a member. I'm going to point you to the website where you can get a ton of information about some of the different work EFF does. I've talked a lot about civil liberties and privacy and free speech because that's what I do. We have lawyers who do intellectual property work. So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of room and a lot of work for that. And otherwise, this is your chance to ask questions for the remainder of our time. I think we've got 30, 40 minutes. So I'm happy to answer questions. I'm not an IP lawyer, so I'm probably not going to be able to answer IP questions all that well, but I will try my best, and if I can't answer it, I promise I will point you where you can get the answer. And I think you had a question you wanted to ask, so I'll start with you.
I mean, we're going back to before we gave an analogy of a person changing themselves to a building and denial of service. I was wondering if a person wasn't physically there, but they just put a chain around the building, does that make it less than the
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know the exact specifics, but, more generally speaking, the First Amendment gives you a right to, let me say it this way, the First Amendment right of free speech does not simply protect the act of speaking, like me speaking to you. Right? There are other things that are the functional equivalent of speech that are protected by the First Amendment. So the right of assembly is protected by the First Amendment. We decided as a class we're going to go downstairs and have a silent protest and block the entrance to the classroom for some reason. No, we're not saying anything. We could potentially have First Amendment rights. So like chaining the fence and not being there, I don't know, I mean, it's going to have to depend a little bit, but there could be some circumstances where that is protected by the First Amendment. So I think it's, the issue with the DDoS thing is really fascinating because, like I said, in the chain yourself to the fence or block the entrance to the school example, it's so obvious and apparent what's going on. But with the DDoS thing, the courts treat it like they would treat somebody who hacked into a computer database or into a computer system. And that's what the real problem is, that they're not really, at least I would say, they're not taking into account some of the First Amendment principles at issue there. Yeah.
Talk about when the government doesn't consider the privacy included in their companies. Has there ever been a case where it's been argued that since
So the third, what the government has used we call it the third party doctrine. So I'm going to refer to it that way. This idea again that you lose your privacy rights when you turn something over to another individual. What the government has done is they use that as an argument for why they don't have to get search warrants to get certain forms of electronic data. So for example, one area where they're very aggressive in using this doctrine is with cell site location data. Okay? Cell sites. Everybody knows what cell sites are? Basically, cell phone towers. Your phone, for better or for worse, emits a little data trail. Okay? So if there's a cell phone tower nearby here, and you've got your phone in your hand, maybe you've got 4 bars or 3 bars, whatever. How many bars do you have? 2. Okay, so not good service. But you've got 2 bars of service. I mean, you're connected. What that means is that you've connected to a tower somewhere around here. Well, that tower keeps a record that your phone connected to that tower. And as you walk down the street, every time you connect to another tower, that phone logs where you are connected. And the cell phone companies keep this stuff. Some of them keep it for up to 2 years. So what the government does, they've got a criminal investigation. They suspect you committed a bank robbery, for example. And what they'll do is they'll go to the cell phone company and say, hey, we got this phone number. We want all of the towers it hit for 6 months. And the cell phone company says, here you go. And now they've got a map of where you've been, right? They can piece together your location. Now, this is, the precision of that data varies depending on where you are. But if you're in a densely populated area like New York City, they can find out where you are pretty damn close to, where you are. I'll give you an example. Within New York City, there was this crazy story a couple weeks ago about this New York Police Department cop who was going to kidnap women and cook them. Okay, you know how they pieced together that case? Is they used cell phone tracking data, and they pinpointed that guy at one point or another was on the block of the apartment where one of his alleged victims, or supposed victims, lived. So they could pinpoint him to that specific block. Now, when the cell phone company, when the government wants to get this data, they go to the cell phone companies, and they don't have a search warrant for it. They get it with a judicial order under the Electronic Communications Privacy Act that doesn't rise to the level of a search warrant. I won't bore you with the nitty-gritty of it. But in a nutshell, it doesn't have the same sorts of, it doesn't require probable cause, and it doesn't require the specificity that a search warrant would require. And it doesn't have the kind of other supervisory qualities of the search warrant. So a search warrant generally, once the police have executed the search, they have to go back to the judge and say, okay, judge, this is what we took, all right? The types of orders they're using to get those cell site records, they don't require that type of reporting. So again, what's happening is the government, gets this stuff. They figure out where you've been for 6 months, and they can tell you at 6:30 p.m. on April 23rd, Hanni was on this corner of San Francisco. Okay, they don't get a search warrant for that data, even though there's a good argument that that information is protected by the search warrant. And when they've been challenged on that in the courts, the government said, hey, look, you've turned that data over to AT&T, or you turned that data over to Verizon because you used your phone and you turned it on. And that's on you. And then you don't have a privacy right in that data.
So basically you're saying that the government's authority entitles it to collect the data, but there's and so if a magazine hacks somebody's phone or something like that to get phone data to figure out who they were texting, could they make the same argument under what the government said?
Well, so you're clear. The Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment only apply to the government.
Okay.
So, private parties, you can snoop as much as you want in other people's stuff, but you're not going to have a Fourth Amendment party. Like, if I decide to hack into your phone and take a look at what you're doing, you can't say I violated your Fourth Amendment rights because I don't work for the government. But, there could be other ways you could challenge that as an invasion of privacy under statutory law. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act prohibits hacking kind of generally, but that's there's a whole ton of crap we could talk about that. But so in the private party context, it doesn't really work quite as well. What I'm focused more on is in the government context. But in that situation, they've argued when you turn data over to a third party, they can go to that third party and get that data, and it doesn't matter if you feel like you have a privacy right in it